Well, welcome back. We're already halfway through day one of this CentreCourt MBA Festival. The content all the way through, it's phenomenal to have been able to bring together these wonderful professionals from so many of the top schools. And as you're about to discover for this second admissions panel of the day, we have a wonderful breadth of voices. I'm joined from the UK by Amy Duckworth. Amy is the head of MBA Admissions at the Cambridge Judge School, one of the top European programs, and we'll be able to talk about the one-year program versus the two-year program, and of course how they're looking to evaluate you as an applicant to this top school. Also based in Europe, but typical of the very international dimension at a school like Duke Fuqua, we have Michael Bulzan. Michael's actually based in Central Europe. And I'm glad that he was able to join us. He's the Regional Director of Admissions for EMEA for Duke Fuqua. From Florida and all of that sunshine, Naz Erenguc, who is the Associate Director of Admissions, or Director perhaps of Admissions. I don't want to sell you short on all of that hard work that you took, Naz, to reach that title. Many of the applicants have just seen one of your alums talking about her Florida experience and how that helped to secure a great job at Microsoft. And it's always lovely to welcome Dawna Clarke. Dawna is the Executive Director of Admissions at Darden. And as we can see with that green screen that you have, the Darden campus behind you, Dawna. So I'll try and hold off on all those questions about the new puppy that you're about to welcome into your family, because this is a year unlike any other. Of course, the wider social and health implications for the planet, but from a business school's perspective, all of you that are bringing an intake, that class joining your schools in the fall of 2020, and we might very well see, if history proves itself again, a great number of applications for next year. So I really just want to take the first 5 or 10 minutes of this panel to have each of you sort of talk through what you're seeing as you go through with the current intake, and the flexibility, of course, that is required as you talk with applicants from around the world that were planning to join your programs in the fall, and perhaps where you then see things going from there. So Amy, if we can start with your perspective from Cambridge, and maybe just talk us through recent months and what you think the months ahead will be like.
Yeah, sure. So obviously really challenging times for all of us. And over the past few months, we've moved our teaching online for the current MBA cohort. And actually, many of our students are still in Cambridge. So we can still really see some of those collaborative and supportive aspects of our network really coming through. For example, students who are having to self-isolate, being delivered essentials by members of their class and things like that. So it's really nice to see that supportive network is still as strong as ever. With regard to our admissions, we've moved our rounds 4 and round 5 interview days to a virtual event instead of hosting candidates in Cambridge. So usually we do on-campus interview days. So we've tried to replicate as many parts of that event as we can virtually. And we have also modified some of our admissions requirements. So for example, it is possible for candidates who meet our minimum academic requirement in terms of their undergraduate degree to apply without a GMAT or a GRE in round 5, and then providing a score could then be a condition of their offer. And then for Cambridge, as far as September is concerned, the intention is very much to return to face-to-face teaching. But obviously, if restrictions mean a continuation of remote learning, then we're definitely well prepared for that. We already deliver blended programs, so the delivery style isn't something that's new to us. So our priority will be the safety and students of the staff, and obviously ensuring their successful learning.
Right. It's interesting. Of course, you talk about the current class and the journey that they've taken at Judge in the first 8-9 months of the program, and I guess that sort of collaborative sense, how that has enabled them to move to a virtual learning format. I mean, it can't have been seamless, but are you really starting to see emerge that sense of a close-knit community and how everyone is supporting one another?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, like I said, over half of the class have remained in Cambridge, using, so some of the students are kind of, if they're living in college accommodation, it could be that they are actually still able to see each other depending on their individual setups, obviously within the lockdown restrictions. But other students are obviously able to collaborate with each other using platforms such as Zoom. And we've done our global consulting project, which is one of our live consulting projects that's been done remotely, and the feedback from students and our clients has been really great. I know that the students are also planning to do, they normally have around this time of year, the Cambridge Judge Business School ball, and I think they're planning just to do some sort of virtual event. So I think we're really seeing that kind of creative and innovative spirit of our students coming into its own, and kind of, I guess rising to the challenge of these strange times.
Right. Now, Michael, we've always talked about Team Fuqua, and again, well, we have 4 schools, I think, that are all sort of the hallmark of very collaborative and close-knit communities. What are you seeing at Duke, both from an international perspective, obviously your responsibilities for the Europe, Middle East and African markets, and then for domestic in the US?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, like you said, this element of coming together, especially when we need each other the most, has always been an important part of our culture. I'm actually a graduate of the class of 2003 myself, and I've seen this even from before actually stepping foot on campus. And this really is the case now. We've just had calls with our regional advisory boards. We have 6 of these for various regions across the world, and I manage 3 of them. And including attendance to this virtual session has been fantastic. They're really stepping up to try to facilitate communication with prospective students, try to facilitate maybe jobs or at least advice for current students and recent graduates, and so on and so forth. So I think from the part of the community, things are moving, and we've looked very good in terms of apps until this crisis came along. Every program was up year over year. So I think we're fairly confident that we can put together a really strong class still for this summer. And that in part is going to be due to the efforts both on campus and across the world through the alumni community.
Right. Now, of course, predictions with COVID are almost foolish, but the Dean at Fuqua, Bill Balding, is reasonably confident of seeing a return to campus-based learning in the fall. Now, we don't know if that'll be the 15th of September, the 15th of October. What is the current thinking in terms of welcoming the incoming class for the fall?
Mm-hmm. So at least for us, I think there's cautious optimism as to the dates. And like you said, I think predicting anything really past next Tuesday is fairly dangerous or tricky, I should say. So we're making preparations for that to happen, but we certainly can't say something too certain. And what we've done, in fact, is actually to be able to maximize the chances of returning to a face-to-face environment right off the bat for the new class, is that we've pushed the start date to late August, very early September for this class. It would normally have been a month and a half earlier, but in order to facilitate visa processing for those students that are admitted and are still trying to sort of get through that process to come to the US, obviously the international community, as well as for the travel restrictions and other things that might actually look a little bit better later on, we've decided to move things a little bit further into the summer and start later without affecting the internship opportunities for next summer and without disrupting that flow of on-campus recruiting and whatnot. But we're just trying to make sure that to the degree that it's up to us, we can start the classes face-to-face. If that doesn't happen, we do have contingency plans, and we're quite versed because of our executive MBA programs to deliver things online. So if push comes to shove, some students will have to probably join us online.
Naz, of course, in the last 3-4 years, with the variety of factors, applications to many of the top schools have been flat or just slightly declined, whereas, of course, Florida as the Hof School has continued to climb up in these rankings, imagine more and more interest for the program. So what have you seen in recent months, and how are you sort of managing the incoming class for the months ahead?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Matt. So I think that when you look at it from a applicant perspective, what we've been doing is, our round 3 deadline is set for May 15th, although we did now push that out. So we are giving candidates more time to apply, largely in case they don't have a test score yet. We want to give them time to take the at-home version of the exam. So we actually pushed our application deadline with the program starting on August 10th. We're giving them until, in essence, 1 month prior to apply. Now, having said that, we know that there is a little bit of kind of this notion of uncertainty when it comes to specifically our international applicants and how we can process, let's say, student visas, things like that. So what we've basically, taken a stance on is anybody that needs to push their applications forward to 2021, we will gladly work with them. If, let's say, we just had a student that had a fantastic job opportunity come about, and so a research project. So we're deferring his admissions and pushing his scholarship package and everything to 2021. So we're doing as best we can to work with those who are still in the application process to get them processed as quickly as possible. But not only is it processing them quickly, but then on the flip side, helping them with the onboarding. As of right now, of course, like many of the schools, we've moved to all online, and we will remain online at least through August 1st. So many of our students who are starting may very well start online, and I think our strength is that we've been executing an online MBA program since 1999. So we have the full resources, our teaching and learning center, everything in place to make sure that there's a seamless onboarding process for our students. And, on an almost weekly basis at this point, we're doing Zoom, happy hours to working with our career coaches. So all of the incoming students are meeting with us on a regular basis so that when we meet them in person, they aren't foreign to us. And in fact, we have a cohort starting here next Monday. So we are working with them, diligently. We have another group of full-time students, 1-year students starting the last week of June. And then of course, our 2-year students are starting in August. So everybody, we've moved to online onboarding orientation, and we're just heavy in our line of communication with them.
Well, I'm glad that we could all have this Zoom happy hour together. Dawna, of course, normally you'd be looking at the summer calendar thinking, right, we've got round 3 completed. We're already talking to all of those early applicants that are looking at Darden, applying as seniors out of college. But all of that has gone out of the window. It's going to be a long summer, and the school was quick to announce as late as the 15th of July, I think is the deadline to work with applicants for the fall. So perhaps, you can just talk through, some of your thinking and how, as with other panelists, you've tried to be as flexible as possible in these difficult times.
Sure. Thank you, Matt. Yes, I think it's really important to be as flexible as possible. I mean, we have a lot of compassion and empathy for applicants who were navigating the application process this year, applying for a 2-year full-time residential program in our case, and then circumstances changed dramatically. So I think overriding principle is to navigate this with the safety and security and health of everybody in mind, and with great empathy for our applicants and the big decisions that they have to face given the circumstances. So we did extend our round 3 deadline, knowing that a lot of people may have been furloughed or may have decided, given the change in economics, that this is a good time to get an MBA. That is quite typical, as you mentioned earlier, when recessions occur. So our round 3 deadline was April 6th, but we will accept that on a rolling basis until July 15th. Also, at the time that we made that decision, both the GMAT and GRE test centers were closed. They subsequently have announced that those tests can be taken online at home. But we decided to be flexible with our approach and how we look at academic merit. So all applicants, in order to be admitted, still have to prove that they are able to do well or exceed in the Darden classroom, but we're broadening the way we're thinking about that so that it's not as narrow as it previously was. I think historically there's more of an emphasis on GPA and GMAT or GPA and GRE, and we announced that given the circumstances and given that we want to be highly compassionate to applicants who are navigating this when test centers were closed, that we would accept SATs or ACT scores, as well as for international students, any type of entrance exam that they needed to take from their home country. So that's one of the ways that we've shown flexibility. Another way that we are really excited about showing flexibility to people who are making big decisions this year is that Darden just announced less than a week ago that we're offering a January start. And we are very well aware of the particular challenges that international students are facing with regard to gaining their visa and loans, for example. So the January start option is something that faculty and the team at Darden have been working on behind the scenes for a couple of weeks. We're really proud of that. It does open up an option for international students to consider that would enable them hopefully to be here and start in January. We're probably going to offer up to 2 sections of that. And so that it shows a lot of flexibility, I think, and commitment on the part of the faculty to really sort of uproot the typical calendar and offer it a brand new start date for them. So we're really, really excited about the January start option. We're also going to be flexible with deferrals. People can defer to the January start. That does provide a different option. On a case-by-case basis, we will consider them for deferrals next year, knowing that circumstances have changed, but we're working really hard to make a compelling case and options for this coming year.
Now, of course, that international cohort is so much part of the experience that,
right.
that each of the 4 schools you all offer. Dawna you all will look at deferrals on a case-by-case basis. Perhaps Amy, Michael, Naz, each of you can just speak briefly to, Dawna raised the issue of embassy closures and visas, and of course the GMAT and GRE, will come back to those home-based testing in a minute. But in terms of, same thing for you, Amy, on a case-by-case, what are the sort of concerns that international applicants are expressing to the admissions team at Judge?
Yeah, so I think a couple of themes that are coming up are concerns about travel restrictions. So some incoming students worried that they won't actually be allowed to travel from their country of residence to the UK, or concerns about getting a visa in time. So the university is preparing for various scenarios. Obviously, as I mentioned, our intention is to return to face-to-face teaching in September, but we are preparing for if that is not possible. So we are looking at, sort of blended learning options. There might be situations where, for example, even if the program can start in September in Cambridge, some of our incoming students will not actually be able to get to Cambridge for September. So we are, of course, considering all of these factors when we're planning for what we do in first term for the next cohort.
Right. Michael, of course, recommenders that people were thinking of approaching might not be as available. Certainly it's all being done virtually, and Fuqua includes a prospective student endorsement from others. So again, are those part of the challenges that you're seeing with applicants, and how they can get their transcripts, how they can get their test scores, how they can get those letters of recommendation?
Sure. I mean, in a way, these challenges can be turned into opportunities. I think Dawna talked about ways that we can actually be more flexible when it does serve the general interest of the student and the community, in this case, Fuqua's community. So it's a really tricky thing, isn't it, that you want to be flexible and yet you want to maintain both the standard of your program and the integrity of the class, which is in fact why these prospective applicants seek us out in the first place. So it is certainly all about being flexible when it does make sense. And I think Amy talked about some things that we're also doing in just basically preparing contingency plans for people that will be prevented by embassy closures and by travel restrictions from actually coming to campus when the action starts. As I said, we're doing this a little bit later. And so that's part of it. And I think in terms of the recommendations and other things, in some ways, people that would recommend applicants are a little bit busier now, putting out fires, thinking through, just panicking, trying to breathe into a bag or whatever they need to do in order to stay sane in these really insane times. And at the same time, they might have a little bit more flexibility. So I think people, to go back to maybe an earlier question, it's important that people apply when they are ready to apply. And so I don't think we all want to rush people into applying this year because of this, that, and the other. But it does seem to be like they can prepare a little bit easier because they have this time at home and these digital options. But yes, you always talk about the fact that the one thing that is not under your control as an applicant is a letter of recommendation or those letters. And so I think it's time to nurture those relationships and try to find the balance to get people to recommend you.
Right. And Naz, picking up on what Michael has said, and Dawna's also identified, with individuals that are being furloughed, or, if you're working in the oil and gas, the aviation industry, I mean, across industries, of course, we're seeing record levels of unemployment or uncertainty in the job market. So with those that are trying to weigh up, is this an unusual, unique opportunity even for me to quickly rush to put together an application for September, whereas I've been thinking about business school for a while, and the plan really was to sort of focus on next year. What advice would you give to those individuals, of trying to scramble and put that application together versus waiting and putting something together later in the year for the fall of 2021?
I think the important thing to consider as an applicant is really just, how do you want to be conveyed to admissions representatives? And I think that, at the end of it, I think we can all comfortably say that we're here to work with applicants. I know at the Warrington College of Business, Huff Graduate School, we have a holistic review process. So if somebody comes to us, I actually just had a candidate that, was furloughed and was all of a sudden, hey, this is a good time for me. And I know I'm late in the process, and we want to embrace those applicants that think that now is the right time. But I would also caution people from jumping into these decisions. This is a big decision, going back to school, whether it be as a full-time candidate or, in other instances, I have a lot of executive MBA applicants and weekend professional and online students. I think at the end of the day, it's taking a little bit of time. And I'd almost encourage an applicant to, even if it's, I tell them, take an extra week or two and really just think through this process. I will gladly work with applicants into the 11th hour, assuming that this is the right fit and the right time for them. At the end of the day, we also want to be cognizant of those students who are needing to relocate and move to a different destination, that need to, become aware of the climate and the culture and everything going on with that school. We just want to make sure that at the end of the day, that the students that we're bringing in, whether it be, as an applicant to an admit, that they're ready, willing, and able to do so, and that we're setting them up for success. And that's the bottom line. We want to set our students up for success.
Right. And Dawna, someone that's been 3, 4, 5 years into their career, typically applying to business school, is this opportunity to step back and actually enjoy applying to business school. I know you're all highly selective business schools, but to really start to think about next steps, the purpose of your career, where you'd like to head next. So what's your perspective? Also bringing in, of course, seniors that might be applying to the Future Scholars program at Darden.
Sure. Well, all of these situations are sort of individual, and one of the things we offer at Darden are something called MBA conversations, where an applicant can set up a time to talk with one of our admissions team members for a minimum of 30 minutes and talk through their individual circumstances and get some advice about if the timing is right for them. And we all love doing those personal conversations. But you're right, Matt. You mentioned earlier that typically during a recession, applications increase, and that's true. The Graduate Management Admissions Council has a great chart that shows that when the economy weakens, applications to business schools go up. And sometimes it is good, that is a good time to take a step out of the workforce and work on these great skills that you get in an MBA program and then re-enter hopefully in 2 years, when people, or over 2 years, when they would actually graduate, the economy will be doing well again, and it will have been a good time to step away, and then it'll be a good time, hopefully, fingers crossed, to re-enter the workforce again. To get back to your question too about round 3 applications, one of the things that I tell applicants often in these one-on-one conversations is that a lot of the hard work is already done. Your application is just documenting work that you've already done. So people have gone to undergraduate school. Many of them have done really well. They were involved. They've established their careers. They have relationships with people who can write recommendations for them. They do have to draft some short answer questions in our case, but 90 to 95% of the hard work is done by the time you sit down and work on your application. And I think that advice tends to be reassuring to applicants who find the application process to be daunting. But if you really think about it, they've been working on this and establishing a good case for themselves for years. It's just a matter of documenting it and accentuating their strengths and the things that they're most proud to convey to the admissions team.
Right. Now, we've talked about the GMAT and the GRE, and with closing test centres now, both tests are available, home-based testing, GMAT for the last week, GRE for the last month. I mean, it almost sounds too good to be true, Amy, this idea of being able to apply to a top school like yours and not have to go through data sufficiency. But there are other ways that you're looking to assess. One of the people that's watching obviously knows the judge program very well. You have a 2.1 UK GPA minimum requirement, which would be what, about a 3.3 US GPA. So how are you then using those other data points to ensure that when they actually get into the program, you know, they can handle the rigor of the academic curriculum?
Yeah, so obviously, just to clarify, in round 5, we are allowing people who meet our minimum academic requirement to apply without the GMAT or GRE, but we would still require them to take the test as one of their offer conditions. So it's not, and they would need to meet, you know, they'd need to obtain a satisfactory score. So it's not that we're waiving it completely. We just recognise that our final deadline, which is actually coming up, it's the 4th of May. Our final deadline doesn't really allow a lot of time for people to take advantage of these home testing solutions. So we're trying to be flexible in a different way. So in terms of the other things that we consider when we're assessing an application, so I think as one of the other panelists has also said, we take a holistic approach. So we're looking at the academics, so the score from the undergraduate degree, the GMAT or GRE if that's there. If the person has also done any other qualifications, whether that's a master's or any professional qualifications. And then of course we're looking at the responses to the essay questions, the work experience, and the letter of recommendation. So it is really a holistic approach. And we really value diversity in our class, so we're looking for people who can bring something different to the table, who can contribute to our class, because there's an awful lot of peer-to-peer learning that goes on as part of the MBA program. So we want to build a class that is diverse, to give people the opportunity to really learn from each other and you know, broaden their experiences through their classmates.
Michael, as an alumnus of Duke yourself, I assume that at some point you did sit down and do 75 minutes of data sufficiency and critical reasoning and the GMAT. That's now behind you. The fact that these tests have been made available online, on the one hand, there's no longer the stress of getting to the test center, finding a place to park your car, but you know, a lot of concern that's been expressed of not having scratch paper to do all of those problem-solving calculations. So it's a big step, that home testing. How are you approaching that at Fuqua? And then perhaps based on that initial response, you know, what are you also looking for that really convinces you that this applicant would be a great fit for Fuqua's MBA program?
Sure. Well, I do find it a little bit strange that you are monitored by a combination of a supervisor and AI to make sure that you're not kind of cheating on the home test, as it were. But I mean, I think it's a welcome step forward because moving this to a potentially online thing in the context of these restrictions is only fair. I think it's better to have this than to completely do without. That's sort of a personal opinion. And in fact, we do require one form of the test, the GRE, the GMAT, or an executive assessment, which is administered by us. We use this only for the Global Executive MBA program at this point, but we're extending that applicability to daytime as well. So we do still want to do that. I personally think that we are missing a little bit of information with the writing assignment, which is now no longer part of the GMAT, for example, but the other components are there. And really, I tell people that are stressing out about the GMAT or the GRE in normal times that it is really kind of our way of fortifying them for the experience on campus. Because if you do not have the tools or the language or whatnot, then you're going to really struggle once class starts. And that's really kind of more for them. Of course, it's something that we report on. It's something that kind of safeguards our brands as well. But at the end of the day, it's something that they need to be comfortable with so that they will enjoy the MBA experience as opposed to be completely terrified in the first few weeks. And so I think that's kind of what we're doing on that front. And then to your second question, to me, I've been doing this about 7 years now, and obviously I was a volunteer before that for many, many years. And really what I look for is momentum and a great story. When I look at someone's application, and as an interviewer, so I'm not actually part of the admissions committee. I don't sit in committee, but I do interviews. So I look at the resume, that's all I have. And I'm trying to establish fit. And really kind of at that point, it's about this momentum, meaning has this person stepped up? Have they contributed to other people, to the success of their organization? Have they been given more responsibility and have successfully delivered on that challenge? And then is the MBA the right move at this particular time? And do they understand how that is going to help them achieve whatever they want to achieve next? So it's really kind of that story and seeing that that person is actually on an upwards trajectory, as opposed to someone that's just been plateaued for 5 or 6 years, is out of ideas and thinks maybe MBA, the MBA program is out of this lull. So that's my short answer to that. And of course, holistic approach is something that's important to all of us, but that's kind of where it starts for me.
Right. Naz, of course, in any of the incoming MBA classes, you probably had people with super high GMAT scores, others, somewhere in the mid 600 range. Given the sort of academic rigor, obviously, that's part of the program, what are some of the other ways beyond a standardized test that you can identify either the analytical skills, what is it, the left side of your brain, and just, they can handle the numbers and they will flourish in our classroom?
Yeah, so if I've done my job right, and if the rest of the admissions committee has done their job right, we have kind of gone through transcripts to determine exactly what Michael was talking about. What has their undergraduate curriculum looked like in terms of the courses that they've taken, the trends that we see. In fact, even here currently, there's a big question about whether students should pursue SU pass-fail as opposed to obtaining letter grades. And I think at the end of the day, for us, it's this combination of to Michael's point of what has their trends look like? How have they demonstrated in all of their actions, both during and post completing their undergraduate studies, that they are ready to get back into school and higher education and become critical thinkers? And so I think that goes back to kind of what courses have they taken, but then what has their professional experience been like? Potentially to Amy's point, what certifications have they done to demonstrate that they have continued to explore themselves and push themselves in that quantitative metrics mindset. So, it's kind of talking through and to Dawna's point, having those one-on-one conversations with prospective students, to the applicants, and in the interview process. It's not just, the admissions side, it's our career services, business career services team members, as well as our student affairs team that, intimately work with our faculty when it comes to curriculum development to make sure that both the soft and the hard skills, the quantitative skills are being assessed, throughout the process.
Right. And so looking at curriculum and thinking of Darden with that focus on the case method, and of course the award-winning faculty that you have at the school, Dawna, a quick question. Do you always start with the bottom of somebody's resume? But also, as you're thinking about the case method and somebody's voice, the perspectives, their ability to then share and contribute to those discussions, what are you then looking for in a resume? Michael talked about momentum. What are some of the characteristics that you love to see?
Honestly, the first thing that I look at when I'm looking at a resume is the bottom mat. I love to see, especially if I'm looking at a resume in advance of meeting somebody in person or in one of these one-on-one conversations. I look at the bottom mainly to see what their personal interests and passions or travel has been. A lot of times, most people will mention hobbies or personal interests as a way to connect with them. So I actually do look at the bottom of the resume first. I really believe, having done this for about 30 years at 3 different schools, that most applicants shine most do shine. They wouldn't be applying to business schools. They didn't have a lot going for them, but they shine for different reasons. So I was just thinking, as others were talking about some of the people that I've seen stand out this year, for very different reasons. So I've seen in the last couple of years, for example, some really compelling cases of people who have stood out for their resilience. They've overcome some really incredible personal circumstances, and their resilience really shines. Other people whose recommenders talk about what a great teammate they are and the lengths they go to help people in their organization. Other people who are just clear leaders within their organization. Some people have taken a leadership role within their families. I remember reading an essay recently about the role that an applicant's younger brother who's autistic has had in his own leadership development, and it was really compelling. So people can shine for different reasons. We don't want a profile that's really similar in a case method school. We want people coming from different geographies, different industries, genders, socioeconomic backgrounds and skill sets, and even when you study leadership, leaders can be effective for very different reasons too. And I think the program helps to crystallize what your leadership style is. But yeah, we're a big fan of the case method. Obviously, I've been doing it since the school was established. I did Darden's tech program, the executive program, and loved how engaging it was. I'd never been exposed to a case method before. You basically go to class and have these really engaging conversations about, what you would do in lots of different situations. I think it's a great way to find your voice, and wonderful to have people with different backgrounds to contribute various perspectives. It's what keeps the conversation so interesting.
And now we know that there's a place in your heart at the bottom of that resume for somebody who walks puppies at the animal shelter. But yeah. we'll keep that to ourselves, right? That shouldn't go public. Amy, I'm sure to comments that other panelists have made and those different characteristics. You have around 50 nationalities in the Judge MBA program. What's the importance of that global mindset, or even how someone can demonstrate that? I mean, we haven't all spent 2 years of banking in Zurich or working in retail marketing in Brazil. How can a candidate sort of show those sort of international credentials for you?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, as you've already mentioned, our class is very diverse. We've got people from just under 50 nationalities represented in the current cohort. So for us, when we're looking at a profile, international experience is hugely beneficial. So we really value that experience. The ability to work in different settings with people from different backgrounds, and that's really important as the workforce is becoming increasingly global. So international exposure, as I've said, it's something we like to see in an applicant profile, but it doesn't necessarily mean you need to have lived or worked overseas. Like as you mentioned, not everyone has had that opportunity as part of their studies or their professional life. It could be, for example, that you have experience working in diverse teams or managing a portfolio of international clients. It could be that you studied overseas. So there's lots of ways that you could demonstrate that you have that international perspective rather than just having lived in a particular country for a set amount of time. So it's not a rigid, it's not like a rigid requirement. It's more the international perspective that we're looking for.
Right. Now, we've talked about characteristics of resilience, curiosity, of course, there will be an entire generation applying to business school who, as recently as 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, were placed in different states of lockdown, wherever they were in the world. And of course, we've all had to adapt to that situation. Do you think that we'll see in next year's applicants a sort of a COVID attitude of those, perhaps for those that just sat and watched every episode available of Peaky Blinders on Netflix, but others, who said, yeah, it might be in a lockdown situation, but there are still ways that I can demonstrate positive impact. Michael, is there a COVID attitude that might emerge?
Oh gosh, I appreciate the question because it lets me go on an unsanctioned rant.
All yours.
I will keep it very brief, and whatever Fuqua wants to disavow. But listen, I actually hope not. I hope we come out of this with positive learnings, with some opportunities that we've taken advantage of, that we've seen we can do it this way as well, but not sort of throw out humanity and kind of leave it behind in this sort of unbrave new world, if I may call it that. And I say that because I think people have been successful so far. Companies, organizations, leaders have been successful so far because they have been different from the rest, meaning that they were courageous. They took bold action. They were visionary. They knew how to execute. And when I hear these people talk in articles or whatnot about the fact that, we throw out the management playbook, this is all new, I don't buy it. I think the competition has shaped people for success, and that is what kind of made some of the companies that we all kind of refer to with great respect. They've been successful not because of the absence of crisis, but because they stepped up, and because of competition, they have done outstanding things. It's not like now we need to be agile, now we need to be creative, now we need to be flexible. No, if you weren't creative and flexible and whatnot until now, then you probably were in a bottom section of the rankings. So all this to say that I hope that people continue to seek out top business schools for largely the same reasons. And that's the ability to turbocharge our mental engine and think analytically, have a broader view, be able to connect the dots better than before, much better in teams, make decisions based on imperfect information and really fast-changing circumstances. And that really has been true before, and I think it will be even more important going forward. So I hope people will at some point get out of this pretty sort of panicky way of looking at the world. And, I hope the handshake will come back as well. So, all that stuff. It's very touchy-feely. We're very touchy-feely at Fuqua.
Naz, we talk about individuals coming back to business school. They're pursuing their own personal and professional development. There's a curiosity and a willingness to learn. So, with that COVID attitude, are you looking to see, well, did they read extensively? How have they used their time? Of course, many have continued to juggle family responsibilities and work in very different conditions. But what do you think you might then be looking for?
Yeah, I think that for the Warrington College of Business, we want that entrepreneurial spirit to be alive. And so, and I think that to everybody's point, and I love, Dawna's point about, 85%, 90% of what makes a qualified candidate has already been done. So really, those people who are thinking about going to business schools, I think that they already are kind of in that turbocharged mindset that Michael was just talking about. And it's really, what have they done during this time to really explore not only their personal, they're diving deep inside, to figure out who they are and really what they want, but also trying to make that impact and, to their communities, whether they're able to go out or not. And of course, I think in this current climate, one of the big questions that we continue to ask students, or as we hear the last questions during admissions interviews, is what can I be doing? And oftentimes we know that students are already, they're still working, they're trying to adjust to this new work-life balance. Series of how to continue that work-life balance, especially to our new graduates or those who are going off to their internships. How can they best navigate not meeting their future, supervisors or their team members. So, for them, how can we give them the skills that they've learned already in their MBA program to be solid leaders, solid communicators, great team, that great team dynamic. But then those who are onboarding, I think, creating in a virtual environment, whether it be through Zoom or through any of the other mediums that we have, our online orientation, onboarding process, creating that culture that we want students who are engaged and energetic and willing and ready to do the team work, even if it is being done virtually. I mean, I think all of this has demonstrated that we can continue to work in teams, that we can continue to move forward, even in a virtual manner. And if anything, I think it's going to make us continue even post all of this, and hopefully it will be over sooner than later, but reanalyze how does it we function on a day-to-day basis, whether it be, all of us on here today, or students, as they are going into school, how they think about, how this can help them further down the road. And, and for companies, how maybe the virtual world will, continue to foster the new breed or new crop of future employees.
Dawna, you've been head of admissions at more than one of the world's top business schools. And I sometimes think about the admissions office, you're almost like detectives. As with the information that you have resumes, you have letters of recommendation, obviously you have the essays that applicants have put together. That detective work, you're looking for what, patterns? Patterns of a particular leadership behavior or initiatives that people have taken. How do those patterns work?
Go back to what I said earlier and just say that I do believe that applicants shine for different reasons. And I might be impressed with say all of you are applicants to Darden, you may stand out and be admitted, but for different reasons. I mean, I think the common themes that we look for at Darden, because it is a case method school, and there's a very heavy emphasis on teamwork, are strong interpersonal skills and communication skills. Those are some of the threads that we'd like to see. Ultimately, we are trying to make a difference in helping to cultivate high impact leaders. So we would like to see some predisposition towards leadership, that the applicants have taken on significant leadership roles or have significant leadership potential. And then the school's job is to take those skills and refine them and enhance them and bring them to a new level. So I'd say interpersonal skills and communication skills they're such important skills, not only in business school, but in business and in life in general. So we do put quite a bit of emphasis on those. And we are hoping to make a difference in the lives of high impact leaders who will go out and choose the world. So leadership is really important to us. But in terms of perspectives, I mean, we do have a wide variety of people from international backgrounds, a multitude of different industries that people bring. So somebody might stand out because they've done something really unique in the wine industry or petrochemicals, or somebody else, like I said, may have overcome some resilience. In many ways, all of our applicants and all of us are going through something that's very, it's a tragic situation and traumatic. And they say that the people who weather these types of circumstances the best are the ones who look for the silver linings. And I do think that, to your point, Matt, I bet there will be a lot of reflection that goes on in the minds of applicants, and as they complete essays and prepare for interviews, hopefully many of us will emerge as a better version of our former selves, including our applicants, and our schools may be innovating in a way under these circumstances that may have long-lasting effects. Like we introduced a January start, maybe that'll be wildly successful and we keep doing that well after COVID, and it may be appealing to applicants. So I'd like to think that we are going to see some great reflection that comes out of COVID, and maybe some really interesting essays about how people grew during this time. I know one of the things our dean is talking about at Darden is the opportunity to write cases about crisis management. Everybody on this panel and you too are navigating, crisis management as, live. And I'm so sorrowful for people who have lost loved ones and for the circumstances that we're facing and obviously have no control over that, but it has forced us to be innovative. And I think it's also underscored the power of compassion and empathy and how powerful that is when we navigate these situations with the utmost respect for what our applicants are experiencing and what they applied for and how that has changed and what we can do to make it better for them.
Right, it's with the alumni interviews that we've done for the CentreCourt Festival. You talked earlier about the sort of job market that the graduates of the classes of 2022, 2023 might enter into. Whatever those markets, my sense just that these talented individuals, they will be helping to define that job market. They will be driving solutions as the world, rights itself again. And hopefully we all move forward. Michael, shaking hands as you suggest. I want to inspire myself for my last question from a question that John put to the admissions panel earlier today. He asked each of the panelists to identify perhaps 3 things about the school that they really think are sort of core to the DNA, to the personality of the institution. I'm going to ask you for one. There are many, and the challenge perhaps will be to find one, and then perhaps one unexpected aspect of the school that that when MBA students actually arrive at Judge, at Fuqua, at Florida, or at Darden, say, I didn't expect this, and it's fantastic. So one thing about Judge, Amy, that you think is fundamental to the strengths of the school, and then one surprise or discovery.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to go with, it's really hard to choose just one, but I think I'm going to go with something I particularly like about the school and I think makes it really special, which is the location. Being part of the University of Cambridge and being surrounded by the history and the traditions of such a well-renowned and historic institution, but also being in the heart of the Silicon Fen or Cambridge cluster. So for those who aren't familiar with that, it's essentially Europe's version of Silicon Valley. So you've got this really interesting contrast between the history and the tradition of the old-fashioned, the quaint aspects of the university, like the formal dinners and the sort of Harry Potter style scenes that you see in the city, and then you've also got the kind of high-tech companies as part of the Silicon Fen, and it really is kind of a hub for entrepreneurship and particularly the number of high-tech firms. The VC investment in Cambridge University spin-offs is incredibly high. So I think it's just that interesting contrast for me. And then something unexpected, I think, and this is kind of based on comments that I receive from candidates that I meet, is I think people people maybe don't expect Cambridge to be quite so friendly. I think it has a reputation, obviously, for being, it's such a well-established, well-known institution. People maybe think it will be a bit more formal, but actually, it's such a friendly place, such a supportive and collaborative environment, and you can tell that as soon as you walk into the business school. And that's just a comment that I receive even at recruitment events. Is I'm so pleased how friendly Cambridge is. So I think maybe that comes as a surprise to some people. Perhaps
when Harry Potter does sit next to you at dinner, I guess that would be a friendly surprise too, provided he doesn't turn into a toad or something.
We're just the floating candles, but the formal dinners are very much like the Harry Potter dinners. So that's always how I describe them to people who aren't familiar with the Cambridge kind of environment.
If we wore a Harry Potter scarf in Florida, Naz, I don't think we'd get through the summer, would we? What would you say was one aspect of Florida that you love to share with applicants, and then one thing that they're going to discover and be wonderfully surprised about?
Well, speaking as I'm a Ravenclaw, because our school colors are orange and blue, so that's the closest house color. No, I'm just kidding. So one of the big things that, I think that our students really, they come in and we say this over and over, and it's one of the things that I think we can highlight the most is the fact that we have a very small boutique style program. This year we're planning on bringing about 50 full-time candidates, and that's 50 among our 2 1-year and our 1 2-year program. So think very small boutique style. You get to really get to know all of us very, very well. You get to know your faculty. Faculty know our students on a first name basis. And, I think oftentimes there's this perception that business schools, how they run and operate, to Amy's point, are very, maybe not so friendly. But at the end of the day, I think what walk away with is that this wasn't an MBA program. Of course, they got that business acumen, they got the skill set, the critical thinking, the team building. But at the end of the day, they walk away, and the most surprising factor is that they know that they've joined the MBA family, and it varies a very strong, growing dynamic of individuals.
Right, and that network that stays with them. Well, of course, it's traveled with you, Michael, to Central Europe, and you still feel that Fuqua effect. One strength, one surprise.
Sure. Our dean talks about this in recent months. This has been a theme about a decency quotient that you would add to the intelligence quotient and the emotional quotient. So everybody, obviously, all of these schools, we have smart people there. There's no question. We also have people with high EQ that know how to work in teams, know how to relate to one another, to communicate. But there's one thing that I found, in fact, all the way back to 2000 when I applied to Fuqua, that has been a constant, which was this thoughtfulness, this idea that I'm here not just to take, I'm here primarily to give, and then indirectly to receive. And so that is something that is manifest in the recruiting process. We really try to know people and therefore select people that have this concern, not just to sort of take, but primarily to give. And that runs through the program and is obviously evident in the alumni community. So this aspect is actually, I think, really critical. And like I said, empathy is not something post-crisis, post-COVID. It's something that's always been important, and we've been kind of hammering away at that concept for many years. I think the surprising thing might be the fact that it really is, although we're based in Durham, North Carolina, it is an incredibly international place to be. Durham has come a long way. I can get into details on that, but the school itself has a terrific breadth of both international representation as well as across the US. In fact, most of our students are from the Northeast as opposed to sort of the South, if you will. So, and that is in the makeup of the student body. Of course, Duke University itself is quite fantastic. I won't draw a comparison to Cambridge because I think no one can. But having said that, it's still a pretty great place to be. And it actually shows into the diversity of the recruiting process. So every company that's has ever hired sort of MBAs on a consistent basis is present at Fuqua. You don't need to be in a major metropolitan area to be a top business school and create opportunities for your students at the very top of the sector.
Michael, you managed to answer that question without mentioning basketball, which is a challenge in and of itself. Dawna, a strength and a surprise.
Sure. I would say one of the things that I'm really proud of representing with regard to Darden is the quality of the educational experience and the quality of teaching. It definitely has had a long-standing reputation in that regard. And when applicants are thinking about giving up a career for 2 years and investing a lot in tuition, I think that's just such an important factor. And I'm really proud to see the effort the faculty members go through to prepare for class and get to know the students and be available to teach them, and the long-lasting friendships that emerge at Darden between students and faculty members. So definitely would emphasize the quality of teaching and quality of the faculty. The other thing I would say, and one of the reasons I was excited to return to Darden was because of the sense of momentum. There's been so much momentum at the school, and it's just been such a joy to be a part of. There's been, great momentum in the capital campaign, which provides unbelievable resources for students, a huge increase in our scholarship budget, new programs that are affiliated with Darden, a new campus in Washington, D.C. But I think probably what resonates the most with me personally is just, how student-centric and applicant-centric it is. There are lots of decisions that are made that keep the applicant and the student on the forefront of the mind. And especially as we're navigating COVID, I mean, it's a lot of work for faculty to introduce a whole new January start, but really are so focused on making this experience great for our entering class and providing flexibility and an option. And so it's nice to be a part of a school that just really cares so much.
Now, thank you. And I know that whether Nassif and others that have asked questions about early applications and chances for scholarships. Hopefully we can address all of those in on the Hoover platform in the next 30 minutes. Just one final question, because you are 4 world-class top business schools and therefore highly selective. If part of this is a question from one of the audience who says, if there are a number of deferrals, and you've all spoken very sensitively about, that case-by-case consideration, we might see a very high application volume next year. What is the crystal ball for next year? Is it going to be that much more competitive? And does it matter, right? We still have to put together the best applications that we can and trust in you 4 and your teams to see the alignment and the fit with our schools. So Amy, are you expecting a busy year next year?
I think at this stage it's really difficult to say, because obviously that we're very much hoping that we'll be able to return to our face-to-face teaching in September, and if we are offering some sort of blended alternative, obviously we want to ensure that the learning outcomes of our students are still met, and obviously that they are still very much satisfied with the program delivery. In terms of deferrals, so obviously that we look at those on a case-by-case basis. So at this stage we aren't offering deferrals on the grounds of concerns over COVID-19, just because it applies to so many people that we don't have a policy that allows for that. So I think we will. I think we will just have to wait and see, and perhaps it will be a very busy year next year. But I think that's always a nice problem to have.
Naz, are you bracing your admissions team at Florida for a busy year?
I am.
Another one?
We're going to continue to offer full tuition scholarship for all of our full-time candidates who are admitted. And so because of that, we will continue. I can foresee in my crystal ball that we'll have a solid candidate pool. And I think that just draws on the fact that we can be, more selective, and we do have flexibility in case, going beyond that 50 mark. And if we have the right candidate, we want to bring them in. And
Michael, what does next year bring?
Yeah, I don't think I want to add much more to what Amy said. I think that's pretty much the approach that we're taking. And I do believe it will be busy, although I can't really say how that will compare to the fall of this year and the spring up until when everything came to a stop.
Right, yeah, because we've got to get through this summer, right, Dawna, first, and meet that July 15th deadline before we even think about next year. But I mean, historically, downturns and upticks in application volume, it might be a busy year, no?
Right, I think it very well could, and if we have a lot of deferrals next year, and I do think that while we look at it on a case-by-case basis, we want to be sensitive to the fact that when applicants applied, circumstances have changed, and want to be respectful of their choice and what's best for them. One way schools can deal with that, if hypothetically we had a lot of deferrals next year and we have a high volume of applications, is for schools to consider offering more spots to people and having a slightly bigger class to offset the level of competitiveness, and not only be sensitive to people who want deferrals, but be sensitive to next year's applicant pool as well. So that's something I'm sure we're going to be discussing.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you'll have plenty of questions on the Hoover platform in the next 30 minutes. Some people have asked about hybrid blended learning. Will it be returning to residential? I think it would be great for those of you to see the beginning of the panel, because you gave some very thoughtful answers. I actually want to finish with, it wasn't a question that we had from one of our many hundreds of viewers, but it was very simply, thank you very much, panel. It was a really informative session. So from I think that attendee says it all. It was great. There's a lot of insight there, and I look forward to reconnecting with all of you, hopefully face to face in the very near future. Thank you for your time. Do send photographs of that puppy tomorrow, Dawna. We're counting on that.
I will.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you for being with us at CentreCourt.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
You too.